Okay, today you have Q&A, and on your first 120, your proper names are Mr. Walker, Watson Press, and Mr. Benson. So this will be your 120 Q&A number 1 for 5 minutes. Ready? Mr. Walker, how long have you been employed by Watson Press?
For 23 years.
What kind of work do you do?
Assembly and service work.
Did you do the same type of work before you joined Watson?
More or less.
How many years have you had in the assembly and service of punch presses?
About 30 years.
Did you receive formal training of some kind for the work that you do?
No, I started off on the assembly line.
So the training you received with Watson has been in the nature of on-the-job training. Is that correct?
That's right.
Who is your immediate boss or supervisor?
As of now,
Yes.
Mr. Benson.
How long has he been your boss?
About 4 years now.
Now, as part of your work, you inspect certain presses in the field. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What is the other part of your work?
I assemble certain units that we use on the press.
Mr. Walker, is the service work that you do in the nature of repair work as the calls come in, or are they regular maintenance calls?
I don't get that question.
Do you do regular maintenance work such as once a month?
Do you mean to call on a customer all the time?
Yes.
No, sir.
The only time you go out is when a call comes in from a customer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are you familiar with the press involved in this lawsuit?
Yes, I am.
Did you participate in the assembly of that press?
No, I didn't.
Did you participate in the sale of it?
No, I didn't.
Your first contact with this press was in the nature of a service call. Is that correct?
That's correct.
At any time, Mr. Walker, did you give anybody a statement or an interview that was written out as to what you know about this press?
Not that I recall.
Did you ever write anything out in longhand to give to your boss about this press?
No, I didn't.
Were you ever interviewed by anyone in the presence of a court reporter as to what you know about this case?
No, I was not.
When was the first call that you made to service this press?
It was in March of last year.
Now, are you recalling that from memory as opposed to looking at something?
There is something that made me remember that particular press.
What made you remember that particular press at that particular time?
It is the only press in my memory that we painted red and gray.
How did you receive the order to go out to that location?
Through the office.
Did Mr. Benson tell you orally, or did he give you something in writing to go out there?
I usually get a bill of lading.
Is this bill of lading typed up as opposed to being handwritten?
That I don't remember.
What did the bill of lading say?
Go out and check a press.
Did it say anything more than that?
No, that's all.
Did it say what was wrong?
Not that I recall.
Did Mr. Benson talk to you about the complaint?
He did mention that the customer had complained about the press and that I should check it out. That's all.
Did he say anything about the nature of the complaint?
He just said the press repeated.
When you receive these assignments, are you usually told about the problem?
Yes.
Did you ever have the experience of checking on a press that repeated?
I can't recall any.
Did you take... Okay, and on your 120 Q&A number 2, you have Daniel A. Wells, Forest Avenue, and Watson Press. 120 Q&A number 2 for 5 minutes. Ready? Will you state your name, please?
Daniel A. Wells.
How do you spell your last name?
Wells.
Mr. Wells, what is your home address?
1400 Forest Avenue.
Is that in the city?
Yes.
How old are you, sir?
58.
Do you work for Watson Press?
That's right.
How long have you worked for Watson Press?
For 31 years.
Do you have a target retirement date?
No, I don't.
What is the extent of your formal education?
I graduated from a technical high school.
What is your position with Watson Press?
I assemble presses and I run presses.
Are you also a serviceman?
When emergencies come up, I go out.
Are you familiar with the press involved in this case?
Yes, I am.
Did you participate in the assembly of it?
I could have. There is a good chance I worked on that particular press in assembly.
But you are not certain?
No, sir.
Would there be records available that would indicate the names of the Watson people that did work on the assembly?
I doubt that very much. We don't keep that kind of a record.
Do you recall anything unusual about this particular press?
Well, it's like a sore thumb because the people specified that the guards should be painted a bright red.
You say the guards are painted a bright red, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And the rest of the press was painted what color?
It was painted gray.
In your experience, is that one of the few times you have seen guards painted bright red?
That's the only time I have seen them.
Could you describe the guard to me?
Well, on that particular press, there is a bull gear and a pinion on one side and a pulley on the other side. So that calls for 2 guards.
I am sorry, I lost you. There is a pulley guard?
That's right.
You called it a pulley guard?
Yes,
One pulley guard?
that's right. It covers the pulley and the motor pulley.
There is some kind of a shield that covers the pulley. Is that what you are saying?
Yes.
There is a metal plate of some kind?
Sheet metal. It is made to enclose the whole wheel.
So that's painted red?
Vivid red, yes.
Name the other guard that is painted red.
A bull gear guard.
Spell that.
Bull.
All right. What does that guard do?
The bull gear actually drives the machine. It turns the crankshaft. Then there is a pinion that drives the bull gear from the pulley that is driven by the motor.
And again, this is a metal plate
A metal guard.
guarding this mechanism.
It encloses the whole wheel so you can't stick your fingers in it.
And that's red also.
Vivid red.
Name another guard that was painted red.
One that comes across the face of the machine to cover the crankshaft.
Again, to keep the fingers out.
That's right.
Was it painted red?
Yes.
And there Are any other guards?
No.
As nearly as you can recall, the only thing unusual about this press was that the 3 guards were painted a vivid red. Is that correct?
That is what makes it stand out in my mind.
Was everything else standard?
Yes.
Did you assist in the actual installation of this machine at the customer's location?
No, I did not.
Do you know who did?
No, I don't.
When is the next time you saw the machine?
Shortly after it left our plant.
You made a Okay, and on your 100 Q&A number 1, you have Mrs. Kendall. This is 100 Q&A number 1 for 5 minutes. Ready? Did you tell him what you have told us now?
Yes.
You told him what you had observed this person do and that sort of thing?
Yes.
How long did you remain at the store that evening?
You mean until I went home?
Yes.
Until the store closed.
What time was that?
10 o'clock.
During the time you were there, did other officers arrive?
Not that I can recall.
When the store closed, was it locked up?
Yes.
The police were gone?
The police were gone.
Who called the police?
The owner called the police from his home.
From his home or his apartment?
His home.
The home is connected to the store?
Yes, it is connected to the store.
I take it the police officers asked you for a description of the individual who robbed you?
Yes, they did.
Did you give them one?
Yes, I did.
How did you describe the individual?
I described him as being approximately 6 feet tall, with long hair and a mustache. I also described the type of jacket that he had on.
How did you describe him as being dressed?
I described the jacket as I recall.
Would you describe the jacket for us as you recall it?
It was a tan and blue plaid jacket.
Mrs. Kendall, when you described the gun to the police, you described it only as you have described it to us now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All you observed about the gun was that it had a brown handle and that the barrel was about 5 inches long. Is that right?
Yes, the gun had a black barrel.
A black barrel. Is that correct?
Right. And there were markings or a design on the handle.
What kind of marking or design?
I don't recall.
All right. Now, did you observe any distinguishing marks on the individual who robbed you?
Did I observe any marks? Yes.
What was that?
There was a mark on his face.
Where on his face?
High on the cheek, near the eye.
Would you describe the mark, please?
It was a mark. It was like something I had never really seen.
Would it be fair to say that when you observed it, it appeared to you as an injury or a bruise or something?
Not that I recall. I remember the mark and I remember feeling that it was different.
Do you recall our talking about this yesterday?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall telling us at that time that it occurred to you that it was an injury or a bruise?
I guess it looked like it could have been.
At the time of the robbery, how far from you was this individual when he pulled the gun?
Across the counter. The counter isn't quite as wide as this desk here.
A typical counter that we would find at the checkout in a store.
Right.
When he took the gun out, did he extend it toward you?
Yes.
At this, your 100 Q&A number 2, you have Richard Bates, Mr. Bates, Elm, Bedford, Indiana, Chicago, Earl Weller, Mr. Weller, and Mr. Westfall. This is 100 Q&A for 5 minutes. Number 2. Ready? Would you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Richard Bates. Bates.
What is your occupation, Mr. Bates?
I am selling cars right now, but I am also a musician.
Would you speak a little louder, please?
Okay.
Where do you live, Mr. Bates?
I live at 224 Elm, Bedford, Indiana.
How is it that you are in Chicago today?
I was summoned here by the government to become a government witness.
Are you a government witness at this time?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Do you know Earl Weller, who is a defendant in the case?
Yes, I do.
Will you identify him?
He is sitting at the table and he is wearing a dark suit.
When was the first time you had occasion to meet Mr. Weller?
I met him in July.
What was the occasion on which you met Mr. Weller?
I was meeting with some friends and he was there.
Between that July meeting and August 23, did you have occasion to see Mr. Weller?
Yes, I did.
How many times did you see him?
I saw him 4 or 5 times.
What was the nature of those meetings?
They were just friendly meetings.
At these meetings, did you ever participate in drugs together?
Yes, we did.
What was the nature of the drugs?
We got high a couple of times on pot.
Have you ever sold narcotics or drugs of any kind to Mr. Weller?
No, I have not.
Has he ever sold any to you?
No, he has not.
Have you ever used him in the sale of narcotics?
No, I have not.
Have you ever used anybody else in the sale of narcotics?
Yes, I have.
Were you contacted by Mr. Westfall to provide some narcotics for him?
Yes, I was.
When were these arrangements first made?
At the beginning of August.
Had you ever had dealings in narcotics with Mr. Westfall prior to the sale that was planned?
No, I had not.
You had never had previous dealings with Mr. Westfall?
No, but we knew each other.
You knew each other?
Right.
How did you happen to know him?
He was dealing back then, and I knew he was dealing. He was dealing in Bedford.
He was dealing in Bedford?
Right.
I see. Could you tell us the approximate time when your initial contact was made with Mr. Westfall?
It was around the 5th of August.
Was Mr. Weller a party to any of these negotiations?
No, sir.
Did you ever discuss this deal which ended in the arrest?
No, I did not.
What was your plan for obtaining the narcotics and delivering them to Mr. Westfall? How did you plan to travel?
I was going to borrow a car and drive out and get the narcotics and take them to Mr. Westfall.
Why were you going to borrow a car?
Because I did not